right, third graders, this is Thursday. We're going to be finishing up 2 pages in our iReady book. These are going to be blue pages. We're starting on page 300, and then we'll move right over into page 301. So we're still working on area, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to take one area, a picture, and we're actually going to break it apart into 2 rectangles instead of 1. So if I were giving you a shape like Elsa had right here, you'll see that this is not a rectangular shape. This is actually 2 rectangles put together. There's 2 ways we could break this rectangle apart. Now easily we could find the total, and they're telling you, you could just count those squares, but they're not always going to be with a grid or squares. So we can break it apart 2 different ways. One way is we could draw a line here and have 4 rows, 2 columns on a big rectangle like you see here, and then have these 2 squares by themselves and another smaller rectangle. Another way we could break it apart would be to draw a line going across this way and have what you see in red, 2 rows and 3 columns, and then this bottom section, 2 rows and 2 columns. So there's 2 ways we could break our shape apart. Now both ways should give us the same answer because we're looking for a total area. Well, we already know that answer is going to be 10 because there are 10 total squares covering this shape. So let's look at it in our length times width. Let's go to page 301. Looking at that small rectangle, the first one, which is in your blue. The blue on page 300, if we wanted to use that method where they broke it apart, we would have 4 rows times 2 columns. And 4 times 2 is 8. And then the smaller one that's in blue has 2 rows and 1 column. And 2 times 1 is 2. Then we need to put those 2 rectangles together. So we're going to take our 2 area answers of 8 and 2, and we're going to do addition. We're going to add 8 plus 2, which we know the total area of the entire picture is 10. And 8 plus 2 equals 10, so her total area is 10. That was the first way they broke it apart. Then they did it a different way, and you see that on page 300 in the red. If we look at the red models, they have a top area of 2 rows and how many columns? 3 columns, and 2 times 3 is 6. And then the one under it has 2 is a square, so it has 2 rows and 2 columns. And 2 times 2 is 4. Then we want to add those 2 back together because we cut them apart. And 6 plus 4 is also 10. So we get 10 for an area. Let's write 10 there as well. We get 10 for our area even though we broke them apart differently. Even though we separated them into different sized rectangles, we are still going to get the same total. So how does this total compare? Well, both totals are the same. So what you should learn from this is if you look at your neighbor and they are cutting their shape in a different way than you did, you can both still get the same answer. You can both have a correct answer. Now Mike breaks apart a shape into 2 smaller shapes. This is number 11. Rick breaks the same shape apart into 2 different shapes. So we have 2 guys that have the same shape, but they decide to break them apart in a different way. Explain how you know that the total area of Mike's 2 shapes will be the same as the total area of Rick's. Why would they both get the same answer? Because they're finding the area of the same shape. And that's what we're going to say. Because Let me do it black so we can see it. Because they are both using the same shape. Again, third graders, just because you break it apart different than someone else, you can still both get the same area because it's the same shape. So number 12 and 13 is going to show us how to do that. Now we've done this before we got out for Christmas, so this should hopefully be a review, but we're going to go over it again. Now there's two ways I could cut this shape into rectangles. I could go across this way and make a long skinny rectangle on top and a shorter rectangle on the bottom, or I could cut it here and cut this little edge off. So I have a little bitty rectangle and then a little larger rectangle. I typically like to find the way that I can make the straightest line. Since this line is longer, I like this shorter line here because I can make it look neater. That doesn't mean you have to go this way. You might decide you want to go across, and you can absolutely do that. Just be careful when you start looking for your length and your width that you're only using the numbers on that rectangle. So I like to cover it up. So if I want to look just at this small rectangle, I can see the only numbers that go for the small rectangle are 5 and 4. So for this rectangle, I'm going to use 5 times 4. What is 5 times 4? 20. So the small rectangle is 20 meters squared. The larger rectangle, let me do a different color. If I only look at this large rectangle, I can see that the only numbers that go with it are 10 and 9. 10 and 9. 14 goes all on both of them. I don't want the 14. 6 doesn't go all the way up, so I don't want that 6. I only want the sides that match that particular rectangle. So that would be 10 and 9, length and width. And 10 times 9 we know is 90 meters squared. Now to get the total, y'all know what the word total means, right? It means put them together. So to get the total, I need to take both answers, the 20 and the 90, and I need to add them together. And I know 20 plus 90 is 110. 20 plus 90 would be 110 square meters or meters squared because we are doing area. Let that sink in of what we've done. We broke it apart. We found the area of the two rectangles and then we added it back together. Make sure we're adding. Even up here it tells you to go back and add. Number 13, let me come over here. Okay, number 13, again, I'm going to try to find that shorter line. I don't want to have to do a line all the way across there, so I'm going to go right here, up and down. If I do that, then I've got this little bitty rectangle. So if I cover everything else up, I can see that the two numbers that go with it are 1 and 3. 1 times 3 is 3. Centimeters this time. Put that out of my way. I'm going to change my colors. Now if I want to look at this rectangle on this side, be careful because it kind of looks like the 8 goes with it, but that 8 goes from here all the way across. So I don't want the 8. I want the 7 and the 5. I only want the measurement of my length and my width. You've really got to look and be cautious about finding the sides that match. 7 times 5, I know is 35 centimeters squared. What's left to do? Add them back together. So we had 3 plus 35 equals, 3 plus 35 would be 38 centimeters squared. And that's finding the area of a shape that you have to break apart and then add your areas back together. So you're going to do your red page now, which is page 315. You'll need to tear it out and work the front and the back.